No. Okay, no, it's fine. How do I say that name? Fermat?
Yeah.
Like Fermat?
Fermat.
Fermat. So I have no idea who this person is. This person doesn't happen to be I'm choosing my words carefully. Does this happen to be a white man from Europe?
I'm pretty sure. Probably.
Sorry. That means this is unlikely to have been the first person to find this. 496T is due this week. I've been getting a lot of feedback on it. The feedback is it's easy now that it's done. So if it seems hard to you, finish it, and then you'll realize it was easy the whole time. In this manner, it is similar to life, right? Once it's over, you realize it was easy the whole time. It is also similar to eating a sandwich. I don't know about you, but I'm not very super into chewing. And if you don't chew your food, then it's bad for you. But once I'm done chewing the food, I'm like, actually, that wasn't that much work, right? Because my blood sugar's back up from the sandwich I finished. I had a really good sandwich several days ago. Who else puts chili crisp on their peanut butter sandwiches?
What? I can try that now.
I don't know a safe for work way to describe how cool it is. So, and I'm at work right now. None of you are. You're all students. You're unemployed. Do any of you have a job? Quad does not count. That's the opposite of a job. Okay. That's getting paid to not work, right? Okay, that's what I do. Can I hear it for education workers? Okay. So we're pretty far along now, right? What's going to happen today is I'm going to introduce RSA. I'm not going to introduce the cool, good way to do RSA. That's next week. And that seemed reasonable to me. I think from a learning perspective, it makes sense to do this the uncool way first so you can see how cool the cool way is. And I don't think you appreciate how cool the cool way is until you've done the uncool way, right? It's, what else is like that in life? You know how you have to be like an undergrad before you become a professor, right? Oh, wrecked. Oh, I respect all of you. So basically, once we've finished RSA, we've introduced the crypto systems. Next week, there's going to be a lot of turning the crank to get the types of performance on RSA out of it we need to actually do anything non-trivial with it. And that's going to feel like work, I think, right? But with SHA behind us and with RSA within our grasp, we can just reach out and grab it. Pretty much ready to send Bitcoin, right? And so what does this mean? This means next week I'm going to teach you some RSA optimization so we can get higher performance, right? And by high performance, I mean you can use this at all, right? It's going to be slow for big stuff. So we're going to get that high performance. Then we're going to do a midterm. I have a planned midterm thing. Oh, I meet you twice a week. Huh. I'll think about that. I was going to make you all write C code in class for 90 minutes. Is that a reasonable thing to do? Everyone say, yes, that's a reasonable thing to do, Professor Calvin. Thank you for believing in us. Y'all don't know how to have a good time. I had to write a Haskell compiler in standard ML in class in front of my professor. In my first year of undergrad. And look how I turned out. Huh?
You did that first year of undergrad?
Yeah, my functional programming class was my first year of undergrad. I wrote my first compiler. Yeah, that's why I'm built different. Constructed alternatively, they say. There are many professors like me, but this one is mine. Okay, so I'm gonna make you write some C code in class. It's gonna be so easy. You're gonna well, once it's done, it'll be easy. And until it's done, it'll seem really hard, right? But that's okay because we like doing hard things, I think, right? Can I hear it for difficulty? That was a trick. Everything we do in this class is easy. Okay. RSA and C is due next Thursday. Not going to be bad at all. We're going to have lab time to progress most of it this week. The tedious thing with RSA and C is actually configuring all the hookups and interfacing, right? I'm going to make you to write a public and private key to a file that is inspired by the actual files. We're not going to use the actual files because they're poorly documented. Do any of you know what a .pem file is? Do you know how to, Jimmy, do you know how to encode an SHA key gen 496 bit SHA key in a PEM file?
No.
I couldn't find it either. It looks proprietary.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It probably would be too hard to reverse engineer.
That's what I thought. And I think maybe it's not hard once you're done, right? So you're going to write keys to a file, which is of course insecure. That's fine. We're not security engineers here. We're just goofy kids looking to have a good time, right? So that's what we're doing this week. You should feel extremely accomplished after this lecture. So begin to cause the neurotransmitters to flow. The neurotransmitters must flow. They who control the neurotransmitters control the universe, right? Okay. We're going to introduce public key cryptography. We're going to introduce Fermat, and we're going to introduce RSA. Public key cryptography. I always think about public key cryptography with the motivating example of Snowden and Greenwald. I don't know if these are household names for all of you. The date on this slide is 2013. When I was working for a faceless, evil, multinational weapons manufacturer in the summer of 2014, they had wanted dead or alive posters up for Snowden on the walls of my office. Snowden was unpopular with Lockheed Martin, the NSA, the Department of Defense, and the United States State Department. Still is. Snowden did this thing you're really not supposed to do, which proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that the United States government reads every single email you've ever sent in your life. And I thought everyone knew that already, so I didn't know why there was so much hubbub about it, but it was a big deal when it happened. I think you all have grown up in the environment where it's sort of assumed that there are governments snooping around on your private messages. Is that true? Yeah.
I have it largely ignored.
Yeah, right. So like we just don't think about it, right? And in fact, what I have maintained for people is that there is a lot of government, but there is much more of us, so it is unlikely they read all of my private messages, and if they did, it would destroy their brains irreparably, right? The content that comes out of my mouth in public is already confusing and horrifying to many humans, and I am not like this in the privacy of my own home. It is much, much worse, right? So, yeah. Yeah, I could just show you my DMs, and you would never recover. I haven't even recovered, right? But in 2013, Edward Snowden discovered this, and apparently Edward Snowden, thought the government, helped people until he started working for it, which is this unusual combination of things, right? So he was a true believer. I believe he considers himself an American patriot, and he has maintained, to the best of my knowledge, that the leaks he did from the NSA were actually with intent to strengthen the United States' geopolitical position relative to its geopolitical adversaries by increasing the legitimacy of the federal government, right? Which is sort of a novel way to approach leaks, right? This is a different perspective than, for example, Chelsea Manning, who is attempting to weaken the United States' position in Afghanistan. That said, Snowden was not in fact born yesterday and realized that leaking large amounts of top secret information that could be considered to expose United States intelligence assets in sensitive positions in other countries or something, maybe that's against the law, right? So when Edward Snowden was going through the steps of trying to get this information to the public, he wanted to have an intermediary, and he arrived on this individual named Glenn Greenwald, who I think was very skeptical or critical of United States government policy related to the Patriot Act, which was probably passed in 2003, before any of you were alive. Is that true? How old are you?
I was born in 2003.
You were born in 2003? Is anyone as old as Jimmy? 2? Oh, we got a 2? Throwing deuces since 2002? Hell yeah. Woo, yeah, let's go. Oh yeah, yeah, we got some other ones. Can I get this one? I don't know. So in fact, 2002 is a real year that actually existed, right? Things happened that year. But Bush got drubbed in the midterms, for example. But that was a long time ago, right? But Greenwald has complained about governmental privacy overreach for a long time and was attached at that time to either The Guardian or The Washington Post. I can't keep these journalists' places straight. So Snowden identified Greenwald as someone that is unlikely to report him to the feds and is likely to actually get the information out there, right? Now, the problem with this is that no living human has actually been able to tolerate Glenn Greenwald in person because he has the same problems with his personality that are wrong with mine, right? So he has no friends. And Edward Snowden also had this problem, right? So we have two people with no friends, right? Which means they're not friends with each other by construction. So this means that they had never met in person to communicate a way to interact with each other and share secrets. And Edward Snowden, since the entire thing that he's aware of that's bothering him, that the United States federal government reads every single email he's ever sent, he's sort of unwilling to send the email that says the federal government reads every email you've ever sent because he's aware he's not supposed to share this information, right? So what does he do? Well, the other team would have used the Enigma machine, right? Greenwald and Snowden meet up probably at Coachella, possibly at Burning Man. They share an Enigma machine, and then they encode things with the Enigma machine, right? That doesn't actually work because they never went to Coachella or Burning Man. They only go to something else. This is the crypto book, which is why there's a line break here. I'm going to read this out loud verbatim to you. A key exchange protocol P is a pair of probabilistic machines, A and B, that take turns... probabilistic, what's that mean? There's a randomization component to this. SHA was purely deterministic, right? That take turns in sending messages to each other. This is sort of like me and my partner sending pictures of our cat to each other, right? Whichever one of us is at home sends the cat pictures. At the end of the protocol, when both machines terminate, so these are the terminators, right? They both obtain the same value, K, and K is the agreed upon message. In this case, K says the government reads your emails, right? A protocol transcript, T sub P, is the sequence of messages exchanged between the parties in one execution of the protocol. Since A and B are probabilistic machines, we obtain a different transcript every time we run the protocol. What does this mean? This means that if Snowden had leaked information twice to 2 different people, it would have looked completely differently to them. Probably the only thing that would roughly be in common would be the amount of information shared, right? We can think of these things as random variables. Do you all know what random variables are from Data 152, which some of you have taken? Perhaps probability and computing, Math 376 offered 2 years ago, something like that? Yeah, okay. We also often refer to an eavesdropping adversary, E. The problem we are trying to solve with public key cryptography is that we can transmit information in public without anyone knowing what information is being passed around, right? And that's what Snowden tried to do to Greenwald. Okay, so this is way back in 2013 when we still stored information on hard drives. Who remembers what hard drives are? Right? I've got a magnet, it's round, and it spins really fast, right? And what's on it? Anime that I stole from the internet, right? Okay. And instead of stealing anime from the internet, Snowden sold top secret documents from the NSA. And these things are equally fun to look at on your computer screen, right? So, Snowden has all this information and seems quite suspicious because I believe Snowden's coworkers were beginning to notice he was seeming an awful lot like a libertarian. Has anyone ever met a libertarian? They talk about guns and gold a lot, right? So Snowden was doing that at work, so they knew that this guy was about to pop off, right? And so he's living in Hawaii at this time. And one of the problems with Hawaii is because it's under occupation by the United States, all of the transmissions into and out of the island can be monitored by the United States federal government, right? So he was really reluctant to send an email that says, I am taking actions against the United States federal government. But he's got all this information he wants to get to Glenjamin Greenwald, okay? So, how does this work? Well, like all other great stories, this begins with a Twitter DM. I believe Snowden reached out to Glenn Greenwald on Twitter because Glenn Greenwald is on Twitter 24 hours a day slinging bangers. Just the absolute most cracked tweets you've ever read in your life come out of this account. One of the best tweeters to ever do it. Probably going to be sainted someday, someone I really look up to, right? I love the 140 character medium and you all should too. So, it is, relatively unsuspicious to reach out to a journalist on Twitter. People do this all the time. I talk to journalists on Twitter. Some of you may have talked to journalists for any number of reasons in your life. Do any of you ever talk to people that write for the Collegian? That's like relatively unsuspicious, right? Like journalists always be talking to people, right? That's what they do. And so somehow Snowden gets in touch with Greenwald and says, Greenwald, I would like to communicate with you in a certain manner. This manner is a manner in which people often communicate to each other, but it is not the same as a Twitter DM. And this itself was not necessarily grounds for suspicion. Now, it was grounds for a little bit of suspicion. By all accounts, by the time Snowden was contacting Greenwald, the walls were closing in around him and he had to move very quickly, but in fact, he did get through this transaction successfully, right? Greenwald, who has the problems with his personality that so many of us has, said, why would I have to install a program on my computer to receive top secret documents? And it took a little bit of convincing, right? How many of you have ever tried to send information to me and I said, I refuse to read this if it doesn't come over GitHub, right? That's what happened to Snowden. He's like, I refuse to put this on GitHub, right? These differences in how files should be formatted are important things to negotiate between people. Anyways, after some convincing, Glenn Greenwald et al. Generates a key, a number. And this number is a number that can be displayed publicly and is non-suspicious because Glenn Greenwald is already a journalist, already is contacted by whistleblowers, and those whistleblowers may wish to remain anonymous, which I think might be a constitutionally protected right in the United States. I'm not actually sure. I don't know how that stuff works. And so Glenn Greenwald generates this number, and I believe displayed the number publicly in the Twitter profile page. I think it was called a PGP key at the time, but it is logically identical to the thing we were working about. And this thing is what is going to be referred to as a public key. This is a key that, when put into another algorithm, can cause someone to encrypt secrets such that only the journalist can read them. This is very useful if you want to say something critical of a government or of a large corporation, right? We recently had all of the Boeing whistleblowers, for example. And there are many journalists around now that have secure whistleblowing technologies. Here is one example in the next slide. And we love this example because you can't actually see it, because this page that I'm going to show you has trackers disabled. And why would you have trackers disabled on your tell secrets to things people? Well, you don't want there to be any evidence that a web browser ever visited this website, right? So we're going to open this link, and we're going to open this link in a new private window, and we're going to trust that our most beloved Mozilla is not going to track my presence on this website, because what I do is already suspicious enough, right? This is The Intercept. The Intercept is the journalistic outlet that was founded by Greenwald et al. To begin to publish the Snowden documents. To my knowledge, none of the original people are still affiliated with The Intercept. The Intercept made a big mistake that caused a big blow-up, but this is a good example of something to look at. The Intercept welcomes whistleblowers. If any of you ever get access to some sensitive, damaging information and you want to get it out, I would probably not necessarily go to The Intercept, but you could. And they cite Edward Snowden here. They're now using something called Secure Drop that you connect to through the Tor browser. And what is this? That is something that looks an awful lot like a key, right? So a very specific thing that we can begin to use for our applications, right? And this is not a full key, right? When you go there, you're going to start to get information about how to get information to The Intercept, right? But this is sort of what Snowden was dealing with in 2013. Snowden saw a very specific combination of characters and was able to move information in a relatively safe way. We want to provide this algorithmic technique to everyone. I should disclose to you that The Intercept made the big mistake in, what year? 2017, I want to say. Reality Winner, who was also an NSA contractor, leaked relatively sensitive information to The Intercept and got burned. It was possible to reverse engineer from the things The Intercept reported the name of the individual that reported them. This person is currently in federal prison and probably should not be, in my view, in 2018. And so if you are going to whistleblow, which you should in fact do if you believe that that is a necessary thing to do ethically, be aware that the technical requirements of successfully whistleblowing are quite high. And you should be very strategic, and you should apply the things you learned in this class and also in other classes if you are going to do that, right? I would like you to not go to prison for doing the right thing, which is what I believe happened to Reality Winner. we're once again centering our cognition on the conception of Greenwald and Company. There were a series of other journalists involved. I only remember Greenwald's name. They published this piece of information publicly, and they also keep a piece of information secure. And what do we mean by secure? The journalists have a pretty strong sense of this, where there is a culture of protecting sources in journalism, to my knowledge. So you may, for example, if you have a private key, keep this thing written down inside a safe, or something that would be difficult for federal law enforcement to get access to if they were to raid your home, right? This is an uncommonly high degree of security. The Bitcoin people, who also use private keys, my impression is that a lot of them have been stamping this into metal, so you don't lose it, so you don't store it on a physical hard drive. And then you keep that on washers inside a safe, right? So you want this relatively safe, because if your house burns down, you don't want to lose your 45 cents of Bitcoin, right? You worked very hard for that 45 cents, right? We do not, generally speaking, want to store this on our desktop in a file that says, don't read this. That is insecure, right? The only thing I put in there is my shopping list, because I don't accidentally want to buy things, right? Because we do not support consumerism in this class, right? The only thing we support is each other. Can I hear it for each other? There we go. That's what I like to hear. One thing I would like to impress upon you, and it is difficult to do this in this class, because in this class we're going to be generating private keys and bandying them around and putting them in autograders. Don't do that in real life. That should horrify you. It should shock you. But it's really fun, so we're going to do it anyways. Okay. So, what is step 3? We are now pretending we are Snowden. We are leaking our sensitive information about whatever, I don't know, secrets. We could all share a secret about ourselves. My secret is that I'm a gamer. Okay. I know, that's the most embarrassing thing I can think of about myself. I'm not going to ask any other gamers. That's a secret. You shouldn't reveal that for free. Okay. Yeah, you should get paid. So Snowden, and not just Snowden, right? Many people leak things to journalists all the time. This is common. I have sent things to journalists anonymously. It is not unlikely that you will come across some of this stuff in your life. The things I sent to journalists anonymously would not get me in trouble with the government, right? I didn't want my coworkers to know I said something on background in 2017, right? Who cares? This doesn't affect anything, right? But the benefits of having a way for people to anonymously send tips to journalists is that journalists can report on more interesting information and inform the public better without the sources having any sort of complications, right? So this is a nice thing to do. And because this is a nice thing to do, it is a legitimate use of cryptography, which means many people could use this thing. So it is not inherently suspicious to be one of the tens of thousands of people that send a tip to Glenn Greenwald. And Glenn Greenwald, of course, is only actually going to read the thing from Edward Snowden, because it takes a very small number of minutes to conclude who sent in what. And my things I sent in about the Chapel Hill Police Department are not nearly as exciting as the things Edward Snowden sends in about the NSA, right? So that's sort of a key component of how this works, right? This thing only works if a bunch of people are using it for stuff that isn't against the law, because you're still bleeding metadata. It is still a little bit too obvious that large amounts of information are going into Glenn Greenwald's server or what have you. So if you do see a place that journalists can use anonymous tips, it is generally speaking part of your civic duty to try and send in something that is potentially interesting and at least shows that that site is being used, right? And you should follow all of the proper security guidelines when you do this, so it is very difficult for someone to conclude you're not the one leaking top secret information, right? So this is just a good use of your time and something to reflect on and do, and it's a good thing to use computers for, right? So Snowden takes the top secret documents, does something to them, and does something to them in the SHA sense, but does not do something to them in the SHA sense of making them smaller. All of the information retains in the operations that are performed on this data, right? That's all there is to it. Then you transmit some big files or a series of small files or some large amounts of information somehow over perhaps the public internet, and perhaps use a VPN or something of this nature, right? The Intercept is now using the Tor browser, right, and so on. And so there's all these combinations of different techniques that can obfuscate what you're doing and that can make it secret what information is being moved. And you follow all of these operations. all of which are in some way based on RSA. And then you're done. And what advantage does this have? I never have to meet the journalist in person and agree upon a secret. I don't have to remember anything. The only thing I have to know is an algorithm, and I have to see someone that has a public key posted. Those are the only two components I know. So as soon as, collectively, the great mass of humanity has converged on an algorithm, as they have with ECDSA, as they have with RSA, right? As soon as these public keys exist anywhere, you can transmit securely to anyone with one of these public keys, right? And this is a good thing, and this is a way you can buy your inflatable frogs on Amazon, because they have a public key so you can safely transmit them your credit card information, which they can use to charge you slightly more than they should and not pay their workers enough. That's public key cryptography. Public key cryptography solves the problem of sharing secrets with people whom you have never met. Fermat's little theorem solves a completely different problem. It solves the problem of how do we solve the problem of public cryptography. So we know we want this thing. We know this thing would be good and cool and useful. I sure hope there's someone that took a number theory class last term that can tell me what Fermat's little theorem is. So I think it's useful to claim that everything in a computer simultaneously both is and isn't a number. What do I mean by it isn't a number? Well, really it's just information, and we don't have to interpret the information numerically, right? It is a series of bits. It is an array of true-false values, perhaps. But separately, we can also claim it to be a number. To me, we saw this quite clearly with SHA-256. You can put any file you want in SHA-256, and additions will be performed over the numerical contents of that file. And that is true even if you provide a text file. It does not make sense to add 2 lines of text together at Python. That is weird. But we can take the information and we can just say, I can perform arithmetic operations over this information. If it is in a computer, we can treat it as a number. And so we are going to begin to treat any of these files as numbers, right? I believe we have demonstrated with the 496T assignment, which you have all begun, right? And at least we started with the big add thing, that it doesn't matter how big the numbers get. The computers can continue to handle very big numbers. Much larger numbers even than 4096T, right? There is a limit to how big numbers can be, right? And it's limited by how much computational power you have and the size of your hard drive, right? But we can deal with very, very large numbers. So the only thing we need now is we need to arrive on some numerical operation that can take as input a public key and produce something that cannot be read, but when provided with a private key, returns to being human readable, right? So we're going to have a 2-stage operation where we encrypt and decrypt. You have already seen the encrypt and decrypt operation, but you saw it with Enigma, which is symmetrical. The encrypt operation and the decrypt operation are the same. This is actually going to be quite similar. So, what do we need? We're going to make the claim that there exists 4 values. There is E, to which I refer to as the encryptor. There is D, to which I refer to as the decryptor. So encrypt, decrypt. And then there are going to be 2 prime values, P and Q. These have to be prime numbers. And these are going to be elements of the naturals. So these are going to be positive integers. They are going to be unsigned ints, perhaps. There exists 4 numbers of this type, such that for all messages M, element of the natural numbers, and I'm cheating a little bit here, because actually M can't be bigger than PQ. So it is not for all M, but we say for all M here. That for any messages that we can't express themselves as a natural number, we can raise M to the power of E, and we can raise that to the power of D, and we can take that result, mod PQ, and we can get the original M back. So what does this mean? The encryption operation takes information in your device and applies an exponentiation operation to it. The decryption operation does the same. Those of you who are progressing on 496T will notice that this is a big mole. This is a big mole operation. It is a big mole operation many times. And then you will notice on this scary side of the screen, and it's very scary over here, That's a modulo, which means that's a big div. So big mul and big div are the components of RSA, specifically the encryption and decryption, right? Shout out dubiously secure AWS instances. Do not assume anything is secure ever. It's not. Okay, so how are we going to show this? Well, we're going to use Fermat's. That is not how that's spelled. There's an N in there. I don't know who put the N in there. That rhymes with Vermont. Okay, we're going to show Fermat's little theorem. And what is this? For all A in the nats and P in the primes, I'm using script P for primes. Is this cooked? Is this sketchy? Do we hate this? Is this okay?
There's no better ways to write it. That is a polynomial, but the other ways to write it are all, I wrote prime out in letters and it sucks.
Yeah.
So we just all can agree that this means prime in this class.
Yeah.
My apologies. The GCD of P and A is 1. What does that mean? Well, we claim that primes have a GCD of 1 with all numbers, but we specifically mean numbers less than them. So this means that this is A is too much bigger than P. We mean that A is not a multiple of P. That's all. That implies that A to the P minus 1, so that is 1 less than the prime, is equivalent to 1 mod P. Okay? That is, there's a prime you can raise a number to in order to get 1 mod that prime. It's kind of goofy. Let's look at an example. Who has heard of our most beloved field of discrete mathematics, combinatorics? Who loves to count? Who loves Dracula? There we go. Yes, slay. Who has seen Nosferatu 1922? Yeah. I love film and cinema and art.
The letterbox?
No. Should I?
Yeah.
Are you shaming me for not having a letterboxed?
If you love cinema.
Oh. I need a letterboxed?
Yeah.
All right.
I expect
Are we
it next
sure about this?
Only good things can come from Calvin having more public opinions.
I've referred to myself as opinion gifted, so I think I should just share more broadly of my opinions, right? Okay. So I learned Fermat's little theorem by writing a proof in LaTeX, which is apparently not as good as Wikipedia, my legal guardian. So there was an electrical engineer who solved this problem. And why do we love electrical engineers? Because all of them over a certain age have allegedly invented Tetris. Thousands of people have allegedly invented Tetris. I was surprised. I assumed one person invented Tetris. But in fact, I found very large numbers of people that allegedly invented Tetris. So this proof is by one of the people that allegedly invented Tetris. So that's cool. Golomb, I think, was at one of the California schools teaching electrical engineering. And we always want engineers to write our proofs instead of mathematicians, because can we really trust mathematicians, right? Yes, they're sketchy. So we're going to make a few simplifying assumptions to make this a little bit easier, and then we're going to do something that I like to call counting necklaces, because that's what it's called on Wikipedia. Our most beloved open source technology, right? It's Wikipedia and the Linux kernel, pretty much. Those are the only two things we like. Does anyone else like anything else? What else do you like, Susan?
Like, what?
Other than Wikipedia and the Linux kernel, what do you like?
Sorry, I didn't hear the sentence.
What else do you like other than the Linux kernel and Wikipedia?
My favorite color is purple.
And that is an open source color. That belongs to everyone, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Fish.
Fish? Yeah. Is that open source?
I think they just open sourced it.
Okay, then it's good now. Yeah.
Zotero.
Zotero? Are you a librarian?
No, but I know my grade history, so very easily.
Sounds good. Okay, lock in. Okay. Are you always all distracted in this class, or is that only me?
That's about right.
Well, I'm now looking into
Purple? Okay.
open source.
Okay. It so happens that if a to the p minus 1 equals 1 mod p, then that also means that a to the p is equivalent to a mod p, because we're simply multiplying it by a an additional time. And we satisfy this by making it such that a is less than p minus 1. So, if, I'm not going to do an example. Do I have to do an example? I don't think I need to do an example. Just type numbers into Python, right? Or C. So I'm gonna claim that these things are equivalent once we make p larger than a, right? If p is smaller than a, we have a problem, right? But we're just gonna assume it's bigger, and I'm allowed to do that because you're allowed to make assumptions about other people. That is not a good life lesson. Don't do that. You know what happens when you assume? Okay. So we're going to imagine that we are a jeweler. And I'm a jeweler, and I work at the making necklaces that contain 5 gemstones selected from the distribution of amethysts and beryls, which I have expressed as the following 32 strings in Python. And that's maybe also JSON. Does anyone know what JSON is? Is that JSON?
No,
It's not.
Because it's an array.
that is not
There-
JSON.
It's not JSON.
Mm.
It'd be a lot cooler if it were.
There's no quotes around necklaces. We're forgetting the big soft giant for pieces.
Yeah, but it could be like it's kind of close.
It's kind of close. Yes, thank you. That's what I like to hear. I don't hear a lot of good job, Calvin, in this class, I've noticed, and that's surprising to me because I think I'm crushing it up here. Okay, so I'm a jeweler. I work at the selling necklaces of length 5 gemstones selected from Amethyst and Beryls company, right? Which means that the number of necklaces, of unique necklaces I make, is a to the p, where a is the number of gemstones, which is 2, 1 for amethyst and 2 for beryl, and p is a prime number, so I only make prime-linked necklaces, right? And I selected 5 as my prime number because 2 and 3 are like really weird prime numbers to use for an example, right? I think we can all agree that. And so at my Etsy shop, Calvin's Necklaces, you can order a babab, a baba, a bab, a bu, a ba, a bab, and a biba. And you can order a series of other necklaces as well, right? I only did ones that started with B because it's funner to say. But there's also ah and ab. Okay. Aba. So you can think of there being a bijection between strings and necklaces. There's no reason to view these things differently, right? Now, who in here has friends? Just kidding, don't answer that. I don't want to know. I don't have any friends. But if I were a necklace, I would have friends, right? And I would have friends, which I decide who my friends are by whether they are rotationally related to me. So if I am AABBA, then I would be friends with AAABB. And in fact, all other such necklaces that have 2 adjacent beryls, right? And why do we love beryls? Because that's where we can cask barrel age our maple syrup, right? So we can overload the term beryl, right? Do you all think of an agate as a semi-precious gemstone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Precious to me.
Yes, and that's what matters, right? So I decided to do amethyst and beryl because I didn't know if you would all think of agates as a semi-precious gemstone, but I wanted 2 5-letter gemstones because I'm also doing necklaces of length 5. So I'm going to patch this from amethyst to agate as soon as possible. Do you all know what a beryl is?
Yeah. It's like a reddish, you know?
I thought it was green. You think it's red?
I thought it was yellow.
You thought it was yellow? Someone look up beryl. It's me, I'll do it.
Oh, it's like yellow. Oh, it can be so many.
Oh, it's, yeah, no, I was not
It
even
probably
close.
can be lots of colors, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it has to be green.
It can do basically anything it looks
See?
like.
Has to be green, listed first.
Green and blue look common.
Now
do
click on
see
images.
a
Click
nice
on images,
magenta.
and then you'll see the yellow one.
Yellow.
Some of these are yellow.
I don't see it.
Oh,
There's 3 semicolons.
Hold on, do I have a color filter? Just a sec. No, where's flux? Night light.
I don't think that's gonna. Okay.
That's not enough. Hold on, can I do more? They all look kind of orangey to me now. Wow, that looks awful. All right, let's do the rest of class.
Wow.
Okay. How do we tell if things are rotationally related? It's simple. We take an any over a list comp over a range over the length of our lists, or in this case our strings, and then we use slices with string addition and check for equality, right? So I think it's trivial what this statement is capturing. So we have friends that are 5 together because there's not 2 of them, they're 5 together. They're not 2 together, right? Isn't that cute? Everyone say "aww," which is this string right here, right? So if you said "ah," that means you have no friends. I'm sorry, because "ah" is rotationally related to no other types of necklace. That is only the 5 agate / 5 amethyst necklace, right? And so what we see here is we have 6 sets, and these are in fact sets. I've expressed them here as arrays, which is fine. I'm allowed to do that, but I shouldn't have, right? We have 6 collections of 5 elements, and then we have 2 collections, each of 1 element. And these are the collections of friends. How many of you have at least 5 friends? That's interesting. So I was talking to my most beloved partner, who said, if we got married now instead of when we were young and dumb, we could invite more people to our wedding, and then listed friends that she's made in the last 10 years. And then she said, and who would you invite? And I listed no one, because I have made no friends in the last 10 years. You should all become a computer science professor. Okay, so I would like to point out I have proved that 2 to the 5th equal to 32 is equivalent to 2 mod 5. Do you see this? Okay. And then I would like to claim that this is a to the power p, and I'm going to say that I proved this for all a and p, right? So there are exactly the same number of unique rotations as length of the necklace, which is a, no, it's p, for prime length necklaces, right? Because after that we repeat. So if I have AAAB and then AA, AA, AB, AAA, BA, AABAA, ABAA, and BA, those would all be rotationally related, but there is not a 6th permutation of agates and beryls that I can sell on my Etsy shop, Calvin's necklaces. If I started selling necklaces, would you all buy them? I would probably sell them at cost, because I'm not trying to make money. Because that would turn me into a capitalist. Yes. Can I get some loud booing for capitalism? Boo. Yeah, I like this class. Cool. We haven't even talked about cryptocurrency yet. Okay. Now, we do have the special case where there is only one symbol, in which case there are no rotational relations, right? And how many examples of the single gemstone necklace are there? Well, there is one for each unique gemstone. I had agates and beryls. I could have, for example, agates, beryls, corundums, diamonds, emeralds, feldspars. Oh dear, I'm getting into the weeds. That's cheating. That's the superset. Garnet, yeah. I think there's things called hailstones. Did you say tourmaline? We're not even close to T yet. Okay. H-I. What is an I gemstone? Igneous rocks. That's also a superset. We're going to have to do some set theory. Okay. So I'm going to claim that this is a proof of Fermat's little theorem. And the proof is that I have no friends. Okay? So this should be easy for you all to remember. I actually thought that was a joke, and then I was like, no, I have a friend, and then I realized. Okay. So I was reading some things about longevity, right? So one of the things going on in the United States right now is the deaths of despair that happen to people that don't have any friends. I don't have that problem at all. I stopped having friends. I feel great. I've never felt better. I drink more coffee, and that's it, right? And the coffee itself is sufficient for my mood. Okay, I'm not recommending any of that for any of you, but don't be shamed for not having friends. I don't have any friends, and I'm happy. Okay. What are we doing? All right, we're going to demonstrate that we can do this monstrosity given that. Okay, and how are we going to restrict this? We're going to say the encryptor and decryptor are nats, but we're going to restrict P and Q to be primes, not polynomials. Sorry, I can't do anything about it. And then M's, and this should not be for all, and it has to be less than PQ. But for all M less than PQ, M to the ED is equivalent to M. So we're going to put a big number on our Twitter profile case. So people are going to raise their message to that power, and then they're going to send it to us. Okay. You have all heard of the Carmichael function, I'm sure. Carmichael's totient function. Anyways, I hadn't. And I don't really know anything about this function. So we are now exactly right at this moment at the point in RSA where I stop understanding the mathematics. So do not ask me questions for the next 10 to 15 minutes. There exists a function called Carmichael totient function, which is related to the Euler totient function. And I don't know what a totient is, but it's not the same thing as a quotient.
Is that lambda?
That is lambda.
Okay.
That's this puppy right here. Now, lambda is used for a lot of things. So I found this quite confusing. The function is the minimum of the m values such that a to the m is equivalent to 1 mod n. So there are a variety of these. We take n, we take the GCD of n with a, that's for all a, right? Basically what we're doing is we're accomplishing something where we can raise a to some power and it's equivalent to 1 mod n, right? Why do we want this? Well, we've been proving a lot of things about equivalence to 1 after raising something to a power and taking it to a mod. So the Carmichael totient function is simply a way of expressing this relationship, right? And it is the minimal such value, which is useful to us. How many of you were of the impression that if we did big add with smaller numbers, it would be easier? Addition with small numbers is easy because we've already done it. That's what makes it easy. And so we want to have smaller numbers because they're easier to work with. Sorry, I'm not supposed to end sentences with prepositions. We want to have small numbers with which it is easier to work. So the smallest number that co-primes to n are equivalent to 0 mod n. And I think that's probably supposed to say 0 equivalent to 1 mod n. Apparently this is quite easy for primes, which is that the totient is p minus 1. And we could plug that in, and we could say, let's see, just try 5. I guess 1 to the 4th power is equivalent to 1 mod n. 2 to the 4th power is 8, which is 0 mod 2. Let's keep going. Okay. If any of the math doesn't make sense, sorry. Okay. This is the RSA algorithm. Let me check my watch. And we're going to use some of the goofiness on the previous slide, specifically this lambda operation. And we're going to use it to compute an encryptor and a decryptor, and then we're going to show that it works. Okay. At this point in time, these slides contain embedded Python. This embedded Python does correctly implement RSA. So these slides contain an RSA implementation. Separately, if you like to go plundering and pillaging and marauding through my GitHub repository, I have also saved these slides as a .ipymb and a .py. So there is an rsa.ipymb and an rsa.py, and also this RSA, what's this thing called? It's called Fermat, fermat.qmd. All of those are present in the repository, and I can give you access to any of them at any time if you like. Separately, I have written a large number of RSA implementations that emphasize different aspects of the algorithm, and all of those are shared with you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do for RSA is we're going to choose two big primes. What do we mean by big? Later on, we are going to mean 2048 bits and larger, and why is that? Because when we multiply them together, we're going to want them to be 400 or 4096 bits. One way to generate large primes is to use 6k plus 1. This is not the best way to generate large primes. There is no good way to generate large primes. It is hard and expensive. There are better ways than others. This is a pretty good way. And so, for the sake of the first week's homework assignment, I am recommending that you use 6k plus 1. Number theorists, did you learn a more effective form of prime generation in your number theory class?
Is this just like witness checking?
Yeah.
No.
This is gonna be nothing.
You sure?
Yes.
You're silencing your opinions instead of sharing them with us as a gift?
This is not an opinion. This is something I feel certain is. Fuck it. Why 6 and not like why is that more? What's the number theory basis for that being?
Most numbers that are not prime are either divisible by 2 or 3.
And 6. Okay.
Yeah. Step 2 of the RSA algorithm is to take your two primes and multiply them by each other. Some of you may have implemented big mul. There it is. That is a big multiplication because that is a Python multiplication, and Python multiplications are big. They are similar to other large things, such as the Andromeda supercluster. I can't think of anything else large. What is something that is large? The Oort cloud? Anyone in Data in the Cosmos? What's the largest thing you've learned about in that class? Yeah, but they're not that big, right? Like, they're small compared to galaxies. Okay, no one can think of a large thing, and I'm going to report you all to Jed. Okay.
Galaxy cluster?
Yeah, the Linear Chaos supercluster.
There you go.
Observable universe?
Large compared to us or large numerically?
The number of subatomic particles in the observable universe, factorial.
Number of subatomic particles in the universe to the power of the number of subatomic particles in the
This is a
universe.
game that,
Which is
like,
asymptotically the same
play
size,
each other.
more or less, depending on who you ask, depending on your complexity
This is
classes.
the number for the number of
We've invented supernation. Okay. Who loves keeping things secret? Yeah, that's what I like to hear. I need more embarrassing secrets so I can disclose them. I think I do lots of embarrassing things, but I do them in public. I'll think of something embarrassing to do later. Okay, so an embarrassing secret that I keep safe is that I don't know what Carmichael's totient function is. And so I'm going to keep Carmichael's totient function secret. It just so happens that for all primes, the totient function of the product of the primes is equal to the least common multiple of p minus 1 and q minus 1. So the least common multiple is not necessarily these two things multiplied by each other, but they could have a common factor. So the least common multiple of, I don't know, what is an example here? 6 and 9 is 18, even though 6 times 9 is 54. Is that true? What's 6 times 9? Is it 54?
Yeah.
Okay. I remark at this point in time that there is a very, very fast way to compute LCMs, and you do not have to use it this week, but you will have to use it next week or your code will never run. Okay. I asked GitHub Copilot what an LCM was because I couldn't remember, and it gave me this. It computes the greatest common denominator recursively. What? GitHub Copilot understands recursion? It's smarter than I am. We could argue that's not recursion, but I don't know. That's pretty close to being a recursive function embedded inside a while loop, right? And it would be trivial to convert this into a recursive function, right? And then the GCD is a times b divided by the GCD of a and b. So the greatest common denominator of 12 and... Wait, what was my example I used before? It was 6 and 9, right? The greatest common denominator of 6 and 9 is 3. 6 times 9 is 54. 54 divided by 3 is 18, which is the LCM of 6 and 9. That's not too bad, right? Okay. Do you all love doing multiplication? Because then you'll love big multiplication because it's many smaller multiplications, right? It's like many multiplications in a trench coat, right? It's like, oh yes, I would like 1 ticket for Nosferatu 1922, please. I am 4,000 multiplications. Okay. Let's find the encryptor. The encryptor is not secret. It is unsecret. It is the least secret thing. In fact, the intent of the encryptor is to be public. This is the public key in public key cryptography. Everyone likes to cheat with the encryptor, but we need to find some E that is less than the totient function, and also such that the totient function and E are coprime. Do you know what number is coprime with every other number? Prime numbers. Yes, that's right. Unless it's a multiple of the prime numbers, which is cheating and occurs at very low probability. My favorite prime number is 2 to the 16th plus 1. What is your favorite prime number?
7.
It's a good choice. Who knows what Hamming weight is? So, who in here loves ham? Not me, I'm vegan. That's my embarrassing secret. Okay, so what is 65537 in binary? So then the next question is, how many ones are in the binary representation of 65537? Oh, you don't have to add them up. You know already. It's the sum of 2 powers of 2, right? So there are 2 ones in the binary representation. So perhaps you could have foolishly said, before I revealed my trap, that your favorite prime number was 7. You've made a terrible and awful mistake. I apologize. 7 has 3 ones in its binary representation, which means that it is 50% more expensive than 65537 if we make the following consideration. Some of you may have noticed that multiplication is hard. Not as hard as division until you're done. Then they're equally hard, right? But some of you may also have noticed that bit shifting is easy. And bit shifting is equivalent to multiplying things by powers of 2. Which means that if I am going to multiply something by 65537, I can bit shift it once, I can bit shift it 16 times, and I can add those things together. Bit shifts are easy, additions are easy, multiplications are hard, so it is very, very easy to multiply by this number inside a computer, right? It is not easier in my brain, because my brain unfortunately implements base 17, which didn't make a lot of sense, but I can't help it. But if my brain implemented binary, then I would be able to do multiplications by this number very, very quickly. I am not going to emphasize this that much because it is not the point of this class. I would like you to think more about how much money it costs you to multiply versus add, and if it makes sense to optimize your cryptographic algorithms, which are supposed to be high performance and difficult to crack, for being able to do easy versus hard multiplications, right? The reason 65537 is the most ubiquitous public key in the world is because of its Hamming weight. The last step is the decryptor. Should that have a dot? Yeah, it should have a dot, right? There should be a decimal point here, right? See, there's one here. That's an inconsistency. Okay. The decryptor is extremely secret. You keep this in a safe that the FBI cannot get into, right? Because you are protecting someone's life, or you're protecting Edward Snowden, who has no life but is still independently valuable. Okay. That looks weird to me. Oh, no, it's just two parens, right? Okay. D is the multiplicative modular inverse of something, right? And we all know what multiplicative modular inverses are, right? The multiplicative inverse of something is 1 divided by that thing. Because if I have n, for example, 7, and I multiply n by something to get the multiplicative identity, which is 1, because everything times 1 is itself, the thing by which I multiply 7 by to get the multiplicative identity is 1/7. 7 times 1/7 equals 1, which means if I take any number, such as 3012, and multiply it by 7, and then multiply it by 1/7, I will get 3012 back. And 3012 is, of course, an imaginary number. It's not a real number. It's a number that is made up for this example. Okay, so I have my 3012. There is a good way to calculate the decryptor that will be the subject of next week's lecture. But for now, I would like to point out that you can simply take E and multiply things by E, and then take the modulo of those things until you get 1. And you know you can do this in a finite amount of time, because as soon as you get to this number, lambda of n, you don't have to keep going. So this will take a finite amount of time to calculate this via guess and check. And that allows you to implement RSA without having to have a deep understanding of number theory, right? You can simply implement this as brute force. And the correct way to do this is with a little thing called the extended Euclidean algorithm, which I have a little call-out box for on the homework. You can implement the extended Euclidean algorithm this week, or you can wait until I teach it to you 1 week from today. And that's what we did today. I introduced the RSA cryptographic algorithm. I provided all of the code necessary to implement it, and I'm going to ask you to go forth and implement it in our most beloved programming language, C89. Let's go through an example of how this thing is actually used, so that you can see that. And then I think you've all done a good job today, so perhaps I will let you out early. Should I offer to do that, or will that cause mass riots? I'm pro-riot. Yeah. I should let you out early? Why should I believe you? You have a conflict of interest.
Do I?
You would be the one getting out early, yes.
You get to go out early too. Hey, you get to go.
No, I have to go talk to someone in Olin Science Center about a college colloquium. Does anyone want to be my CA?
What is it, Mom?
Huh? The colloquium assistant? Yeah. We might work on that. They're probably going to assign me someone that is like allergic to the command line, and then we're going to fight. So it should be you. Has anyone in here been a CA? I hear it's really fun when you're my CA. That's what Shovik said. And Shovik has never lied, right? Inside you are two wolves, right? I only lie and Shovik only tells the truth. And we're both a wolf. Okay. Let's make a secret. My embarrassing secret is my favorite programming language. And also, it is very helpful that this is my favorite programming language because the implementation I'm going to use here can only store up to 1 letter. So your secrets have to be very short, right? You can also store your grade in this class, which for all of you is an A, good job, okay? On the course evals at the end of the term, one of you is going to write, I wish Calvin would post our grades into Canvas, and I will be unhappy that I read that because I just told you all of your grades. Okay. Okay. There is a prime checker. This is how I check primes. This is not the best way to check primes. This is not 6k plus 1, for example, right? I simply apply an any to the list comprehension ranging from 2 up to the square root. I take the floor of the square root, and I check to see if any of those things have a 0 remainder. And I find that 60 is not prime and 61 is prime, right? I think that makes sense. Does this slide make sense? Can I get some like vague head rattling? Perhaps some loud cheers? I like it better when you cheer, but I worry that if I keep asking for it, you'll think I don't have any friends. Okay. In the spirit of that we are supposed to keep some things secret, I have adopted the notation of encoding secrets in the return values of functions, right? So I do not have a plain text storage of my prime numbers. My find large prime implementation accepted an integer input, which it would multiply by 6. So I'm going to get relatively large primes here, right? And so I just like threw some seed values in there, 10 and 15, which are, that is my second and third favorite multiple of 5. And so I'm going to calculate the large prime from that, and I'm going to store it in hide p and hide q. And then I'm going to not hide n, because n is a component of the public key. N is a little thing that we haven't necessarily introduced too much, but we are going to use that as our modular base for all of our operations. So anyone, in order to encrypt something and send it to me, should have access to n to do the modular multiplication. When you raise something to a power, you take it mod n, right? M to the ed mod n. I found this trick you can do where you can just put the lambda character inside Python. Isn't this cool? I bet you all really liked this. Let's open terminal. We love terminal. PowerShell. Let's open WSL, and we'll just wait a moment because we love Linux. No. Okay. Okay. So got Python. Oh, we've got Python 3. You can just use this as a variable. I don't even know how to type it. Does anyone know how to type this character?
Windows has that like Windows period thing that lets you do a bunch of special characters. Might be in there.
I'm not on Windows. I'm on Linux.
Of course.
Yeah, right. So this is fun. So we can store functions in here, right? What function should we store in here? Perhaps we should store a lambda function inside our lambda operator. Oh, yeah. Should I return it as a string? Look how fun this is. I love programming. Can I put a none in here or does it break? Yeah. Okay. I think we can put things inside of it. And this is how the lambda calculus was invented. See? This is called recursion. So I don't know what the point of all of this was, but I think it's funny, so I thought I'd show you. You can also do this with emojis, if you haven't done that. Yeah. I don't know what you can do in C. I don't know C. I'm only a Python programmer. No, stop. Okay. Cool. So I had a lot of fun here. Okay, so that's how I hide my lambda, because the lambda is secret. Ooh. It's an embarrassing secret, like the fact that I drive a Honda Fit. Oh, that's not very cool. I should drive a Lamborghini Galadriel Spider, right? The public key is unsecret, so we just have E. And why do I use E? Because it is the encryptor, right? There's also the exponent. I calculate the decryptor using this guess and check operation relative to hide lambda. I take a candidate D, and I increase D until such time as D times E mod the Carmichael's totient function is equal to 1, and then I return that D. Well, how would you find it, Andy?
No, that works. It's saying that because you're storing it.
Anyways, presumably it's stored somewhere on your computer. So some numbers are big, and some numbers are too big for Python, because Python is the worst, right? Can I get some loud boos for Python? No loud boos. So, you all like Python?
Big Python.
We're big Python fans?
I think that one can enjoy C and Python.
That's because it's the same language.
But I thought you loved C.
Python is a
They're the
C
same.
autocoder. That's why I like Python so much.
Well, so you do like that.
Yeah,
Why are
sure.
we booing then? That's not.
'Cause it doesn't work.
very nice.
Yeah, so in fact, you can't print this value, can't print m to the power e. What is m? M is the ord of s. What is S? S is our secret, which in this case is C. And what is E? E is 65537, so we can recreate this pretty easily. S is the secret. E is, can I just type binary? Lucky guess. Okay. We take M, which is the ORD of S. Cool. 67. Really? Oh, 64A? No, or 65 is A? Why does it start at 65? What's 32? Oh, that's non-printing. What are the powers of 2? 7. Okay, I got distracted. I don't remember what we're doing. Oh, right. Okay, so ORD S is 67. 67 to the power of is too big. Python confirmed the worst. Okay, so what do we do about that? No problem. We use repeated exponentiation by squares. You don't have to do it by squares, but you should do it by squares. So I'd like to point out that if I have 2 to the 4th, that's 16. And that also happens to equal 2 to the squared squared. So I can always break things out into squaring. And I can also do that like so. Is that going to work? No, that didn't work. Do I have to put parens somewhere? Does anyone know how this works?
You understand? 2 to the 3rd is like 2 squared times 2 squared times 2 squared.
Okay, so 2 to the 4th equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, right? And 2 to the 5th equals 2 times 2 times... Single equals times 2 times 2, right? Easy. But we can say, well, this thing equals squared. And that's squared, which means we can also put a 3 here. Right. So we can decompose our exponents into other arithmetic operations, right? And so we can do this little thing called exponentiation by repeated squaring, where we can say 2 to the 5th equals 2 squared times 2, I think. No? Is that right? Okay. So we can repeatedly square things over time. That's what this does. We have our base cases, where 2 to the 0 is 1, and 2 to the 1 is 2. And then if there is an odd 2, or an odd exponentiation power, we multiply by the incoming message value. We square the message, and we take all of them modulo n. We can apply modulo n at any point in time. And we can demonstrate this by saying, how big is 2 to the 5th? That's not very big. We can take that mod 3. And we preserve our modularity there. Because this thing is 1. I don't know what I'm doing. That makes sense to me. Okay. Because this is 16. Right. Okay, here. That's 16. 16 mod 3. 16 times 2 mod 3. And then 16 times 2 mod 3. No, we should do 16 mod 3 times 2, right? So you can move your multiplies in and out of the modular expression, and then you can shift your multiplies and exponents between squares and other exponentiation. So we do all of that, and I debugged this code, and it took me like 2 minutes to write, so I'm not going to rewrite it. Then we can do mod exp m-e-n. What's n? Did I calculate n? I didn't calculate n yet. There, it's small, right? So we're now able to do modular exponentiation, but we cannot do this thing. That doesn't work. So the usefulness of the mod x function is it allows us to actually calculate these values. Here is an n value. We encrypt, we mod exp, we get the message back, and then we also get the cipher value. Notice this cipher value is bigger, and its bigness is relative to the size of n, 65537. So that thing will be less than 65537, but it can be up to 65537. I encrypted one character. That character is of size 8 bits. It's actually of size 7 bits, right? Doesn't matter, 7 or 8. And my power is of size 16 bits, right? Because it's 2 to the 16th plus 1, or 17 bits. So my power is much bigger than my message. And then you can decrypt your message, and you get 67 back by doing the same modular explanation operation. And then you can check, you can round trip, you can do end-to-end with exponentiation and exponentiation. And here is the entire implementation. Let's run it quickly. Ta-da! We can encrypt and decrypt. This is